A big shakeup in Southern California. An earthquake rocks the region, the strongest since the deadly Northridge quake nearly 15 years ago. Damage is minor, injuries are few, and experts call it a drill for the big one. Good evening, I'm Michelle Tuzzi.
I'm Marc BROWN. The epicenter of this magnitude 5.4 quake was near Chino Hills. It's about 29 miles southeast of downtown LA. Seismologists say it was fairly shallow. It ruptured about 7 miles underground, but it was felt as far south as San Diego and as far east as Las Vegas. We have live team coverage. John North has the latest from Caltech seismologists. Leslie Miller looks into a communication breakdown stemming from the quake problems. And we begin with Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter. She's live near the epicenter with an update on the damage and recovery. Leanne?
Mark, some of the more extensive damage can be found miles from the epicenter. Here in Pomona, these falling bricks narrowly missed hitting 2 men as they were walking by. Tonight, this building has been deemed unsafe as aftershocks continue to roll through the area. A pile of rubble fills this Pomona alley after part of a brick building came crashing down during the powerful quake. For Mitch Politi, who was walking by the moment the shaking started, it was a close call.
I thought, every building in Pomona, was coming down. And, being in a situation like this, you don't know what to think. You're just thinking, the world's ending. Less than a mile away at Pomona City Hall, the warning is posted after one of the massive windows shattered in the shaking.
It didn't seem like it would ever end. It was the longest earthquake that I can honestly say I felt.
All of a sudden, you just heard the noise, and then the shaking came.
The 5.4 quake, which was centered in Chino Hills, left its mark all across the area. In Corona, it was a wet mess inside a hockey rink after a sprinkler line snapped. At a nearby pottery store, the delicate ceramics didn't stand a chance. Numerous stores had to close their doors while they cleaned up the damage from toppled bottles and cans.
Never seen this in my whole life. Cars were moving all over and the ground was moving and everything that stood on the ground was moving. It was an experience I'll never forget.
At the Chino Walmart, the fire department was called in to make sure there was no gas leak or structural damage. Down in Yorba Linda, residents are still tallying the damage after the strong earthquake shattered dishes, toppled TVs, and destroyed furniture.
It felt like the house was literally going to fall on my face, just completely cave in. It was moving from left to right. It felt like it was never going to end.
Certainly some frightening moments for residents out there. The good news in all of this, that there are no reports of any major damage. This building, as I said, deemed unsafe, but we're not heard of any other serious cases. Also, no reports of any major injuries. Live in Pomona, Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Leanne, thank you. Well, an LA City Council meeting came to a sudden stop when the earthquake hit, and our cameras were there.
And there was the earthquake. Earthquake, earthquake.
We're experiencing an earthquake.
Earthquake.
Please.
We got an earthquake. Still happening.
Members stopped debating and started calling spectators and city workers, reminding them the building had been retrofitted and it was safer inside than outside. With Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa on vacation in London, acting Mayor Wendy Gruhl suspended business for several minutes but didn't evacuate City Hall. Some downtown buildings did empty and 5 people were hurt in a stampede on Wilshire Boulevard.
Well, the seismologists have been studying it. They say today's quake was a calling card from Mother Nature, a reminder that the big one is likely to hit Southern California sometime in the future. Caltech experts are still studying the data from the quake. Eyewitness News reporter John North has been there all day. He joins us now with the latest. John?
Well, Mark, seismologist Kate Heaton calls this one a drill for the big one. It's going to happen sooner or later. And as you indicated, seismologists are looking at this earthquake to see what they can learn about future earthquakes and what they can do to help people survive them. And there is a lot to be learned because it's been a while since we've had a quake of this magnitude in populated Southern California. The seismometer at ABC 7 let us know that the shaking was at least a moderate quake. It felt like a giant launched an uppercut to the bottom of the studio. This is a movie put together by Caltech that illustrates the up and down motion of this earthquake, of the Earth's surface. This quake was about 9 miles below the surface, common depth by California standards. It lasted a couple of seconds at the epicenter.
Based on my experience, I'd say there's about a 50% chance this will be on a fault that has not been mapped before.
But Dr. Heaton says it may take he and his colleagues a couple of days to determine. This was Northridge in January 1994, a 6.7 earthquake where 60 people died. Today's earthquake had only 1% of the energy of a Northridge earthquake. The last one near Chino was Whittier Narrows in 1987, a 5.9 that destroyed much of downtown Whittier. But how much of a precursor to a bigger quake is one like today's? Could it be a foreshock?
There's a 1 in 20 chance that one of the aftershocks will end up being larger than the earthquake we already had, in which case we'd have to change all the terminology to this would have been a foreshock and whatever would be the main shock. It's only 1 in 20 chance.
Dozens of aftershocks have followed this. Only 2 so far were greater than 3.0. It gives scientists something besides a computer model to study.
Where we want to get to is the maps are made while the earthquake's still underway, and that the information arrives to your cell phone before the shaking does. So that's a pretty exciting prospect.
And that might mean, if it ever happens, that people away from the epicenter would get a few seconds warning that an earthquake was on their way. As to the percentage chances of a quake larger than the one we had today, they drop off pretty dramatically. Within 24 hours, down to 1%. Live from Caltech, I'm John North, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, John, thanks a lot. Well, today's earthquake hit just as the Riverside County Department of Animal Services was filming a public service announcement. This video was provided by the agency. It shows the head of the volunteer program and 2 young volunteers getting ready to shoot a public service announcement. But then the earthquake hits, prompting one of the volunteers to get up and run to a doorway off camera. The agency reports that all of its animals and shelters are doing fine.
Well, today's earthquake did not cause serious damage, but it did rattle a lot of nerves. And when Southern California stopped shaking, millions of people rushed to their phones only to find all circuits were busy. Eyewitness News reporter Leslie Miller is live with more on the aftermath of the earthquake. Leslie.
Mark, moments after the earthquake, millions of Southland residents grabbed for their cell phone, trying to get a hold of loved ones to make sure they were okay. But when they couldn't get through, they tried again and again and again. The cell phone networks were so overloaded they were blocked. And for many Southland residents, having no cell phone service was the worst aftermath of the quake. A jolt of Java tonight is nothing like the jolt that shook Southland residents this morning.
I was in a home laying down in my bed, and the bed started shaking, and I woke up, and then next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, are we really having an earthquake right now?
The earthquake caused a lot of frayed nerves, and fortunately, that seemed to be the worst damage. At this Macy's store in Woodland Hills, 3 floors flooded after 2 pipes burst as a result of the quake. Crews were sent in to clean up the mess of water and broken glass.
The mall was occupied by both shoppers and staff at the time. There are no reported injuries.
In Pasadena, this pharmacy seemed to get the worst of the quake's thrust, causing merchandise to fall off store shelves.
I just saw the ceiling just moving, and I just grabbed the pharmacist by the shoulder and just hold on to her really hard. And then everything was moving and shaking. The ceiling was vibrating a lot.
Dozens of people stood outside local businesses, still rattled from the rumbler, many trying to reach loved ones on their cell phones with no success.
I was pretty sure it wasn't the earthquake. It was the fact that everybody was on the phone trying to call somebody saying, hey, did you feel the earthquake? That was what was frustrating to me.
Within a half hour of the quake, Sprint, like most cell phone carriers, experienced an 800% spike in calls. Sprint says in a case where everybody's trying to get through, hang up and try this.
Use text messaging. Text messaging uses less bandwidth than voice calls. Also, if you have a smartphone, send an email. Email will get through because it uses data, and the data network operates better than voice in these types of situations.
And cell phone carriers say they can prepare for high calling events like the Super Bowl by bringing in portable cell phone towers to beef up capacity, or they can turn up the volume on the existing network. But in the case of an unexpected event like an earthquake, there's really not much they can do to prepare. Advice they do have for cell phone users: only use your cell